Oh, 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 oh.
Welcome to Multiple O's, the spin-off podcast for The O Show. The O Show is hosted by Dr. Oriana Fox, the artist with a PhD in self-disclosure. You hopefully know the spiel by now. If you're interested in candid confessions, creativity, nonconformity, and mental health, you've come to the right place. This, my friends, is season 2 of this podcast, which explores the crossover between working on the self and working to change the world.
Hello there. Thank you for tuning into Multiple O's. I'm your host, Oriana. Before I play this week's interview, I just want to reach out to say if you're enjoying this series, if you love Multiple O's, please do tell your friends about it. Tell your friends who are interested in art and identity politics and how the personal can fuel creative practice. This is the podcast for them, so please do not hesitate to tell them about it. Send them the link. I'd really appreciate that. The interview this week, I don't want to delay it any further with any more nonsense, any more self-promotion, but it's actually quite relevant to this week's episode, this week's interview. The idea of self-promotion, working on one's career, can feel uncomfortable for artists, and so we need advice, and that's what this week's all about. This interview is with Marina Press Granger of the Artist Advisory. Without further ado, I will play the interview for you because I introduce her further in the recording. Enjoy. Thank you. Thank you. We're back. It's the O Show. Thank you. It's the O Show live edition at Mimosa House, and we're going to be taking a little turn here and going across the Atlantic to connect with a woman based in New York City, who is an expert at helping artists to promote their careers, to promote and progress their careers. She's worked for over 15 years in the art world. She has a lot of experience, and people pay her a lot of money for her advice. And she has really good advice, like we need to get over this ingrained idea of the starving artist. We need to get rid of that myth. Let me welcome Marina Press Granger of the Artist Advisory.
Hello. It's so good to be here or there. So good to be
here. Thank you so much for being here or there or wherever. So this is wonderful. I just really wanted to have this face-to-face with you again, because yes, as you pointed out yourself, there's something about us that's kind of similar. I was going to put on the announcement, separated at birth, ?
Maybe.
But I should have put my degrees up behind me. That would have been funny. Anyway.
Extra one.
Yes, I have one extra one. Yes.
Yeah.
So tell us, could you tell us about, the myth and breaking that myth? And
oh my gosh, there's so many myths, but the starving artist one is something that we hear since we're kids, right? We hear that, Van Gogh was crazy and he never sold a painting and he cut off his ear. And that's probably one of the first things that kids hear about when they think about, when they even mention that they want to be an artist. And something like this really goes back to this other type of economy we had where artists were always seen as something that was superfluous, right? Art was something that we didn't need. But actually, if we go back to earlier times in art history, even back before the Renaissance, art was always created with a need. And that is really what makes us human, that we can create this artwork. right? Art always had a function, but now we are literally living in the lap of luxury compared to our ancestors. And so we have this luxury of having beautiful things around us, but also things that entertain us and bring us a really good sense of our cultural discourse, right? And that is the art that we have today. And so one thing that we need to know is that art is so important for us. That's the first step of dispelling this myth. And the second step is, I gotta tell you, there are so many artists out there that we think of that are super famous. You know, we think about Damien Hirst and Jeff Koons and Yayoi Kusama, right? We think about these big artists and we think, well, if I get that big, that's when I can make a living. And that's not true. I worked as a gallery director in New York City for many years. And one of the things that made me have the biggest aha moment was when I was sitting there writing a check to an artist for over $100,000 because he sold so many paintings. And, well, not so many, two. And the thing is, if I tell you the artist's name, you probably have not heard of them. So the second thing to really think about is, you know, being a starving artist is not true. There's so many artists out there, they're not even famous, right? Famous, as we say, that have made a living, a decent living off of their artwork. And so when you get to this idea that your artwork is super important to society and your value is important and that other people are doing it too, why can't you?
Excellent. Yes. Why can't you? So, yeah. So you were mentioning, getting a sense of your own worth. And so there's a kind of, I've heard you speak, and actually I wanted to say that I found out about you from Dr. Lisa Gives a Shit on Radio Free Brooklyn. Just want to give a shout out to Dr. Lisa and Radio Free Brooklyn.
It's her birthday, everybody.
It's her birthday. Happy birthday.
Dr. Lisa, if you're listening.
Happy birthday, Dr. Lisa. So, yeah, and I was really impressed with everything you were saying on that show. And so, yeah, and one of the things you said was something about that there's something about psychology, and that's something you work on with artists, is like helping them to hone their sense of their purpose. Yeah, could you say more about that?
Sure. Yeah. So I've been working with artists for such a long time, you know, in different capacities. I worked with artists as in the gallery scene. I was working in galleries in New York City for 15 years. And then I started this business and I started to work with artists even more intimately, right? But one thing that I noticed was that their mindset was so, so important. And there were 4 steps that I kind of formulated to getting there, right? Wherever there is, that's the theme of today's show. But to getting there, to getting to success. And these 4 steps, one of them includes the psychology. But if I tell you what the 4 steps are, I think you'll understand why psychology is so important. So the first step is to have the intention of what your work is about and what you want to do with your work, right? What do you want to communicate? Because without that intention, you are aimless, right? And that's why, if you're here in the U.S., you remember going into grade school, the teacher always wrote an aim on the board, right? So that's why intention is so important. You have to have that aim. And the second part is mindset and releasing all of these beliefs that are instilled in us. Sometimes you don't even know you have a belief, and that's because it is a belief, right? So, for example, there's this old anecdote about how when, and also totally on brand for this show right now, how when the Santa Maria and the ships that Christopher Columbus brought over to the U.S., when they were landing on Sorry, not to the U.S. Okay.
Undo. Starting over.
Do over. So next to the American,
the New World, or the whatever, the land that was already occupied, that they took to be unoccupied.
That they unjustly took. They were coming over. The natives were unable, the indigenous people were unable to register seeing ships at large, so they didn't even see them coming. And that is a really good example of a belief that is so ingrained in us that we don't even understand, we don't even see. But some beliefs as an artist that I just, if you're an artist and you're listening, you want to think about are the starving artist myth, right? You want to dispel that belief. And another belief is that you always have to be prepared for the worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario is coming. And let me tell you, that belief really comes from our ancestors way before, society was even a thing, really. Back when we were living in caves. Because if you have this belief that you have to have enough food, you have to make sure that you are not going to perish, right? That you have to survive. That's how we evolved, to make sure that we're always prepared for the worst. But like I said earlier, we're living in the lap of luxury compared to our ancestors from tens of thousands of years ago. And we no longer need to be so ruled by this idea that we have to be prepared for the worst, right? And one easy way to get over that belief is to think to yourself, am I a fair person? And chances are you're going to say, yes, I'm a fair person, right? I'm totally fair. So if you're going to be a fair person, why not, and when you think about being prepared for the worst case scenario, you allow yourself to be prepared for the best case scenario, right? What about that? Why not be fair to yourself? So that's another common belief that we have. And a third one that is so, so important to artists that I see all the time is this fear of rejection. And so that we have this belief in us that rejection is like the worst possible thing. This also goes back to the olden days of tens of thousands of years ago, because if we were rejected then, it would probably mean death, okay?
Yeah.
We probably could not survive hanging out, outside of our community next to all the bears and the woolly mammoths. Okay, so another thing to think about is don't worry about rejection, because the way that we think about it is from tens of thousands of years ago.
Actually, I have a little fix, if I can interject, for rejection. As I say to myself when I get rejected, or I read somewhere, I can't remember, maybe it was you that said it. I consider that proof that I tried. Was that you that said it?
I don't know. And probably.
Am I quoting you back to you?
No. I mean, look, who knows? I think there are other great minds out there, us, who probably said, the same thing. But yeah, it's proof that you tried. And it's really proof that you're going to keep going, right? So back to my 4 steps. Intention, mindset is so important to get rid of these beliefs and to get into a really good, confident space. 3rd step is once you're done with that, you're ready to present your work. And when you present your work, right, and you're feeling good about it and you're feeling optimistic, it's going to have a higher vibration. It's going to feel nice to look at it, and you're going to present it with such respect, right? You're going to make sure all the images are level, there's white balance, right? And you're going to have a really good feeling about it. So when you present it with confidence and with intention, that's when you're ready for the 4th step, which is taking action, right? So those are my 4 steps: intention, mindset, presentation, and action.
So how does, I mean, it can be very hard to find one's intention or to hone it down. Is it? Do you agree?
Right? When I work with artists, sometimes it takes us a month of meetings to figure it out, sometimes more. Especially if you're an artist who does many different things, right? So I ask you to go back to the beginning and maybe not when you were 7 years old, but go back to the beginning before you even start making the work. Ask yourself, why are you even making it? What's the point? What is inspiring you to make it? And one really important part of the intention that we often forget, we always think it's outside of us, but it's oftentimes inside of you, right? Because the intention really comes from who you are, right? And who you are, in a way, in a very crude way, in a very clinical way, qualifies you to have the perspective that you have, to have a very good say in your artwork, right? And to bring your intention forward, right? Qualifies what you're making.
Someone's written a comment here. I'm an artist who's juggled full-time work and my art for years. I still believe in my work, but actioning or my approach seems to be a barrier for me.
Yeah, well, this is a very common thing. Do you mind speak to that?
Yeah, please.
So, the first thing is you want to make sure that you are treating your art career the same way that you would be treating any other career, right? This is another belief.
That is such a key point. I want to just say something, interrupt you again, because I discovered I feel like it was a decade ago, I was reading some self-help book and I thought about, and it asked me some question, like gave me some exercise to do, like about my career planning. And I realized that I was very clear in my focus on my day job and the career path of that, but that I didn't give the same kind of consideration to like my goals as an artist, like where is it that I actually want to go to and how could I get to it? And yeah, it's interesting.
And we treat our art careers, people treat art as if it's a hobby, and that's another belief we have to dispel. So once you close out your ears and you don't listen to, your responsible parents or, people around you telling you, hey, it's a good hobby to have, you start to realize that, hey, it's a great career to have. There's so many artists out there who are thriving, right? Super important.
Yeah, and there's another myth I wanted to ask you about, which is I'm too old to be a young talent.
Oh, I'm too old to be a young talent. Okay, let me tell you this. I could say, age is just a number, but who am I kidding, right? It brings on, limitations of sorts. You can't party like you used to, right? And so socializing is a little bit difficult, but that's a really, really big myth because there's so many artists out there who have gotten their first wind after the age of 65.
But that's like a trend in the art world right now with like, oh, let's give these women a chance now.
Because they've been underrepresented. But here's the thing, that is a limitation that's in your mind. If you're thinking about it, then you're going to find people who also think about it, right? So don't think about it. Think about the flip side of it. And you're going to find people who are really going to connect with you. It's confirmation bias, right? And that's that beautiful psychological thing where we think, okay, everyone's out to get me today. And you're going to find that everyone is out to get you today. But if you think, no, actually, I'm doing good. People are like liking my thing and they don't think that I'm too old and, and then you start noticing that there are other people who are so excited about your work, just like you are, right?
I hope so.
And there's this song from the past. It's I don't know if you know it, but it's Just an Illusion. It's by the band Imagination. Do you know about this song?
I think I know that song, yeah.
Illusion. So I always think about that because our perception is our reality, right? And that's how these big, big artists were able to create their reality, right? Jeff Koons didn't come out thinking, "Oh, I'm no one's gonna like my thing." They came out thinking, "I'm the bee's knees," and so really, you have to be your number one cheerleader.
Why is that so hard to do?
Oh, well, because of our evolutionary amygdala situation. Our amygdala is always programmed to think about, our amygdala is like our lizard brain. It's the most primal part of our brain. And hi, Bernardo, I see you joined. Bernardo is an artist Bernardo Torrens, who's based in Spain. He's an artist who went to medical school and pretty much dropped out last minute because he was like, I want to be an artist. And he got some really amazing points in his career. But one reason that I point him out is that he pivoted from being a doctor to being an artist. And he knows what the amygdala is. And amygdala gives you this negative bias, right? We are programmed in order to survive because we're always thinking about the worst case scenario and how we can protect ourselves. We always default to the negative, and that's why it's so hard. And one remedy for that is gratitude. Gratitude is the attitude. When you get into a gratitude practice, the first thing that you do in the morning when you're having your coffee, you sit there and you think about the things that you're grateful for. You start to reprogram your mind into seeing the positive, into not seeing the negative so much.
It's just funny because I feel like we were just yesterday kind of trashing positive psychology in one of the other interviews. So I'm feeling
I love psychology. Oh my gosh.
We were just it was just like a kind of critique of oops, dropped my mic. It was kind of a critique of just that there's structural reasons why one might be unhappy, and no amount of positive thinking is going to get you out of it. But that's a kind of different thing because an artist maybe, I don't know, maybe it isn't different. I don't know. I'm not sure. But yeah. Oh, I wanted to. You brought up on Dr. Lisa Gives a Shit something about your I think it was your grandmother or something about your kind of family history.
Yeah. Yeah, this is probably do you remember what I'll repeat it.
Yeah, please repeat it.
I've heard this often, that this was very powerful for people to hear because what I said was, my ancestors, I'm Jewish, and I came to the United States in 1991 as a Soviet Jewish refugee. And my family lost, my grandparents grew up in Europe during the Second World War, right, as Jews. And luckily, they were not in concentration camps. But I did have 14 relatives that died in the Babi Yar, which was the kind of extermination of the Jews in Ukraine. And I had other relatives who just had experienced so much. My ancestors went through so much. And I had this moment where I was sitting there and I was thinking, my ancestors didn't live through the Holocaust. They didn't live through all this adversity so that I could have a shitty life. Okay. And it's my responsibility to have a good life. And I think it's also my responsibility to show others how to do that too.
Yeah, so we might be like distantly related. Well, I mean, I don't know, probably not. But because my family history on my dad's side, my dad was actually born in Kazakhstan because they fled Poland to when the Nazis invaded Poland. And my dad was born in Kazakhstan, kind of on the journey they went on after they fled in 1945. So anyway, that's just kind of a
Back on my 23andMe or Ancestry and see my fifth cousin. I mean, look at us.
Yeah. So what do I want to ask you? Yeah, I guess, but there, are there any artists who, like, this is another maybe belief whose practice is just so weird, so non-commercial. Well, I guess it's maybe about the conflict between maybe an anti-capitalist. Like, what if what if part of your purpose or your intention is to be a kind of anti-capitalist or put anti-capitalist messages or messages that question the capitalist system out there? Mm-hmm. And then how do you then channel that into self-promotion, like towards monetary gain? Well, I guess everyone's got to live, right? Everyone's got to put something on the table.
Dr. Fox, this is such a good, beautiful question. I'm going to start my TED Talk now, okay? Here's the thing. There are billions of people in the world, correct? Billions. Yes. I don't know what the number is, but it's more than I can count.
Are you going to go towards like there are people with money who are also anti-capitalists? Is that where this is going?
Yes, but here's the thing.
Okay.
There's a market for everyone, right? And so I know, I sound like such a capitalist talking about marketing, but here's the thing. When I say market, I don't necessarily mean a private patron buying. If you're anti-capitalist, right, and you want to have a comfortable living, which you should have, which you deserve as a human being, this is your human right, then you can find ways to be anti-capitalist and give your work to the people, but also make a living. And there are a few ways you can do that. So one, you can go through places like here in New York, we have like the Department of Cultural Affairs that really puts on, it's through the government puts on public art and any kind of public related events. It's art for the people, right? Another thing you can do is you can create some portion of your work that is available for the masses, meaning that it's accessible in price, it's accessible in the type of work that it is, because, it goes back to your intention, right? Like, why are you even doing this? Why are you anti-capitalist? Are you anti-capitalist because you think everyone deserves it? Well, then do what you have to do, right? Do what it is you're supposed to do. Give it to the people, right? And how can you give it to the people? You don't have to price things the way that you're taught to price things, extravagantly in galleries. You don't have to only look for these collectors who are like hoity-toity. You can literally make artwork for the people at the price that is accessible for them, at the type of work that's accessible. You can go to institutions that are non-capitalist that will support you and your mission. And it always goes back to intention. So I think it's so important to be clear in being non-capitalist in your intention, because that's how it's almost like, it's not even a dog whistle. You can probably put in a dog whistle, like a Karl Marx quote. it's not even a dog whistle. It's something that is going to be like, okay, I think that I should say that I want this artwork to be for the people. And then other people who are like that are going to fund you, because guess what? They're socialist or maybe anti-capitalist, and they want to share their money for a good cause, right? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It does. Although it does sound like a bit like they want, like ka-ching, 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 ka-ching.
No,
It's just the intonation or something. And ka-ching, ka-ching. There's your anti-capitalist money.
well,
or just getting by.
we're another belief is that money is bad, right? People who have money are bad. And it all stems from a misinterpreted part of the Bible where I don't know the Bible that well, but look at me, come on. But it was something along the lines of like the love of money is evil, not money is evil. So being lustful after money is considered evil in the Bible, but we keep thinking, oh yeah, money is evil. And for many years, like, look, for centuries, people have been oppressed by the rich, right? And taken advantage of. It's true. But one thing that you have to understand that now in our society, I think that money is shifting to a space where it is energy, right? It's an exchange of energy. And you have to allow yourself to receive that energy that you put out into the world with your work, right? And so don't turn a blind eye. If that's even a colloquialism, I don't know. Don't turn a blind eye to receiving, right? Because it can come in so many different ways, and just be open to receiving, because that's how you're going to get more energy to do more of what you want to do.
Excellent.
Are you like so inspired?
I'm inspired. I'm inspired. But yeah, it is hard to shut down my kind of critical mind. I guess that's maybe how I generate more myths for you. It's like my critical mind kicks in, then I have a new myth to put before you for you to dispel.
Funny, I'm just gonna say this is like so ironic that I'm dispelling myths here, because I'm literally sitting here with like crystals on my desk. Okay. That is right, let me tell you. That's pretty much myth, right?
That's funny.
They're so pretty.
They are pretty. I'm just checking how we're doing on time. We started at 5, so so it's 5:30 now. I'm just keeping an eye on it. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So yeah, let me think of another myth. So yeah, you spoke briefly on that podcast about a certain woman you've been working with who was kind of older. Like, to go back to that myth of you're too old to be a young talent. You said there was one woman, I guess it was a while ago because things were still open. It was like pre-COVID. I think you did that interview because you talked about going out to galleries and.
There's several examples that I could but
I think she was a painter and she was older, and I guess that's the thing. Going back to the whole that question and then your example of like or me interjecting that it's like a trend in the art world, this rediscovering older women artists. But it's like, okay, well, if you're not that old, not that young, if you're like in the middle, and you're supposed to be like mid-career, you're supposed to be like established and on your way to becoming, or you're just like in obscurity and waiting to be old enough to be discovered as having been wrongfully obscured.
Right. Okay. So I think that example I was bringing up was Catherine Bradford, who is a really big deal. Ooh, if you're listening, Catherine and Kathy, you're a big deal. Like, stop it right now. Okay. She also wears round glasses. That's her secret to success. The thing is, yes, it seems like it's a trend in the art world, right? But if you are an older artist and you're sitting around waiting for somebody to knock on your door and discover you, it might not happen. Now, the reason that it happened for Catherine Bradford, and it didn't happen like instantly overnight, it did happen in the later part of her life for her. But one of the big reasons that she's continuing to grow as an artist is because of her interaction with her community. One of the most important things that she says that artists should do is get on Instagram. And that's because on Instagram, you are connected where we are now, right? You're connected to anyone and everyone. That's one of
product placement.
Yeah. Third, by the way. So, that's one of the reasons I started my business. So you can connect to anyone, right? So I'm going to show you how. But the thing here is, when you're connected to community, as an older artist, you might not be able to go out much. You might be kind of stuck at home. What you should do is connect to the community that you can find. And, don't expect for somebody to knock on your window and say, hey, I'm going to give you a show. You have to really put yourself out there and see what other people are doing. The reason that she was so successful is because she added to the conversation on painting. She wasn't just painting what she dreamt of. She saw that there was a conversation and she built on it, and people were into it, and they were also into her interacting with them, right? They would be so excited that she commented on their posts, that she went to their studio, that she, shared their thing in her story or whatever. And this is a great example.
But isn't that a lot of work?
Well, here's the thing. There's so many things I want to say to this, and I'm like, what do I say first? First of all, it shouldn't feel like work, because and even if it does, this is your job, right? Let's go back to thinking about art as a career. And also, social media is a real thing now, okay? It's been proven. People make money on here. So you might want to treat it a little bit like work, but genuinely. And it's okay to spend a little bit of time every day on Instagram, half an hour, just, a half hour at a time, just so you see what's going on. It's like the feed of news, right? It's called the news feed for a reason. So you see what other people are doing. You want to find and engage with other people who are doing what you're doing, because they're going to create a community with you, right? So it doesn't have to be a lot of work. You could put your own boundary on it too and say, you know what, half an hour is way too much, Marina. I'm only going to do 15 minutes. And that's fine too. But really think about all the time you're saving, not going outside right now.
That's true, I guess. Yeah. I have two things to say to that. One is, you're talking, you keep bringing up sort of fine art examples, and I'm in this weird world of sandwich between, or kind of interdisciplinary arts. And they have a term for it on the Arts Council of England, this option you can pick. And I always blank out on the name of what my thing is. Always, for some reason. I have a mental block against it. I think they call it combined arts. Mm-hmm. So there's these weirdos like me who work kind of in between, in a kind of itinerant way between galleries and theater contexts and club contexts. And where am I going with this? And I just think it's, that kind of, again, maybe it's another myth that I just, but I don't know. Can you help people like me?
Yes, because here's the thing. This woman once said to me, she's actually, I'll tell you who it is. She is the CEO of a brand called Sunday Forever, right? She is very successful with her company, and they sell like candles and like really cool dresses that make you feel good, that you can like sleep in, and with like bows and stuff, like totally cool. And she said to me, sometimes you have to not be so precious, right? When it comes to these things, because, and treat yourself like a business, right? Look, even if you don't want to be a capitalist, which is totally okay, right? You have to get yourself into the mindset of this is an energy exchange, right? Between me and whoever else. I do this for you. I give out energy. I should receive some sort of energy. And I'm hearing so many beliefs that when you are telling me this, right? Your one belief is, I don't belong in the fine art world. I don't belong in the other world. I'm like a global citizen. I have no country.
That's right.
But here's the thing. The beautiful thing about this is that you have many countries, right?
I do, in fact.
Yes, you can hop between world to world, right? And here's something that's kind of interesting. People will always assume the best of you. They're always going to assume that, you're way more rich or successful than you think they think. People are always going to assume the best of you. And so when you hop from one world to the other, they will assume the best of you. They're going to say, oh my gosh, that's Oriana Fox, the performance artist. Like, how exciting show, in this fine art setting or whatever it is, right? Like, whatever. She was great in London. She's like big in London, so she's going to be really big in Tokyo, kind of thing. And one example of that I have is I worked with an artist who for many years had a very successful graphic design business. So successful that her designs were in major retail, like major brands would collaborate with her. I'm trying to, like, for example, if I'm imagining we have a lot of listeners here who are in London. So imagine if this is an artist who's doing collaborations with Liberty of London, right? Or something like that. And when she came to me, she's like, well, look, I've always been painting, but under a rock. And like, what do I do? Because I have all of these graphic design things. And while it's different from being a combined artist, it's being in two different worlds. And I said, hey, there's this beautiful thing where people assume the best of you. So let's do this. Let's put up your recent work on your website and then make a section called collaborations. And that section has all of your collaborations through your graphic design business that have her name on it anyway. So when you see that, you think, oh, these companies liked her work and hired her to do this collaboration. Whereas they never even really knew about her paintings, right?
That's a tip, folks.
That's a tip. And that is, it's packaging in the presentation of it, right? So when you're no longer, when your mindset is set, right, and you're no longer paddling to keep your head above water, you can start thinking very clearly about how to do this most effectively that falls in line with your intention, right? So that you're being authentic and true to yourself too.
Okay.
You're asking the questions, but I'm just curious, if you have an idea, I could help you formulate.
an idea. Oh, well, I was going to give an example actually of I did an O show in a whatever, in a location in London, and I invited or someone I knew in New York had a friend who was moving to London to study curating, and so she came along and saw the show, and she really loved it. And she worked for like a big New York gallery. I can't even remember now which one it was, but it's been going blank for me. But anyway, so I was trying to do a new series, and I asked her like, "Oh, do you think?" Or she said something like, "Oh, they would love you at the gallery. Like they'd love to have one of the O shows there." So I got her to put me in touch with the person from the gallery, and I sent him my work, a show reel or whatever. And he was like, yeah, we'd love to do, your aesthetic is really interesting, or your editing style is weird, or whatever. I don't know. He was like, yeah, we could have an O show, but it would be like in the bookshop attached to the gallery, not in the sacred gallery space. And I was like, well, would there be a budget for this? No. This is like this is a gallery with like loads of money. And they were like, come and do it for free.
2 galleries that have a bookshop attached to 3, actually. Then
I think it might be Hauser and Wirth.
Do
they have a bookshop?
Wow. I guess they don't know your worth.
Well, I just was like, I didn't pursue it because I was like, I don't really want to, buy flights to go somewhere and then have to fork out like honorariums to my guests, when I'm in this big gallery that has tons of money. Like that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yes. There's also...
But maybe that wasn't the right context. Like I'm sure there's probably other places in New York.
Well, I see your question. You're like, hey, I had this like seemingly good opportunity, but like they didn't want to give me money. So like, what? How am I supposed to pay for this? So, and how did you decline the offer?
I didn't decline. I just left it. I just sort of like, I had one phone call with him when I was in New York for the summer. I said, can we meet? And then he was like, oh yeah, come to the gallery at this time. I went to the gallery. I saw the bookshop. I thought there's no way an O show could happen here because there's no space. And secondly, he wasn't even there. I asked the receptionist if he was there, and he was like, at the Uptown gallery, because it's one of those ones that has an Uptown gallery as well. So he was there. So he told me to come, and he wasn't even there. I was like, I just let it sink. I didn't pursue it.
I think sometimes I say to artists, like, you should really write back, like, I would love to do this, but I would need a budget of X amount to execute this idea. I think this would be like the greatest place to do it. But I'm not sure, basically play to their ego and say, like, I'm not sure if you're able to cover the budget.
All right, I could try that. I guess it's been so many years now, I think. Well, anyway, it's COVID time, so that could be an excuse as to why I didn't get in touch sooner.
So you could actually reach out to them and say, like, hey, I've been doing the O show on Mimosa House London's Instagram, and it's been getting really good Instagram ratings. And, I would love to explore the option of doing something like this again, but I do need a budget. I'm not sure if it's in your wheelhouse or your power to give me this budget, but I would love to, start the conversation again. And he may say, okay, well, I don't have the budget. And then this is what you do. You find a grant. To get you the money for this. And there's got to be a grant that you can locate. Local grants are sometimes easier to get because there's less competition for them. So that might be really good. But there's so many different options out there for grants that you can probably find one. And so this also goes back to, look, you're anti-capitalist, right? So why not use the social services we have in order to make this happen? And you can ask for, $10,000 for this, right? Or more. and see what happens. The other thing you can do is, if you were going to do it and you were going to be a little capitalist about it, you could do something where you charge admission to the O show, you like $5 or whatever, and have really big guests who, maybe don't even ask them, offer them smaller honorariums just as a courtesy, so that you balance out your expenses. You could.
Or if they're big stars, they shouldn't be asking me for an honorarium. They should be doing it for free.
They should.
I'm asking me, that would be ridiculous. I'd say I wouldn't invite them anymore. If they were a big, successful artist and then they wanted to take my money.
Would you want an honorarium if Oprah asked you to be on her show?
Yes. I'd want a payment from Oprah.
Okay. I'll go on for free. Just call me, okay?
Oh, really? Okay. I maybe don't feel as strongly about Oprah as you.
Probably. Anyway, I just love that the O shape. Something about the O.
Something about the O is good, yeah.
But the other, I was having a conversation with an artist that I was working with yesterday, actually. She flew down to an exhibition opening and basically took a loss on going to visit the show because her painting didn't sell. I mean, it sold, but it didn't cover even half of the expenses of going down there. But I gotta say, going back to this idea that money's energy, right? And she spent money on going down there and she met people. And I think from there, she's going to get more connections and more traction. But she's at that stage in her career where it's worth it for her to put in a little bit of an investment into travel like that, right? It was like that for me too. In 2018, when I first started this business, I went and I did a panel at an art fair in Miami, and I was out $2,000 for travel and everything, but it was so great for me to even have that experience.
You got to go to Miami.
I got to go to Miami. I mean, I got to sit in traffic in Miami. I think that's, but it's think about it. It's not about the clear exchange of money. For a socialist, I don't know if you're a socialist, but for someone who's anti-capitalist, you sure do think about money like a capitalist sometimes. So, it's a question of is this exposure going to be good?
Yeah, I mean, that is how I tend to think about it. But then, this is what I wanted to say before. I think maybe a good angle for someone who is anti-capitalist or socialist to think about, their attitude about asking for money is that it kind of makes everything worse off for other artists if you don't ask for the fee that's kind of the recommended fee. Like here in the UK, we have these, organizations that advise art organizations what they should be paying artists for their time.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you budget for a project and you're going for a grant from the Arts Council, you have to say, oh, I'm looking at those guidelines and paying people appropriately, including myself. But in a lot of cases, if you don't value yourself, you will then undercharge, and then that makes it worse for all artists because we're not getting the rate that we actually are sort of required by these guidelines,
Yeah, absolutely. You're so on the money about that. And also, don't be afraid to ask for money, right? Why are you afraid to ask for money? If you're truly a socialist, you're going to use your money for a good cause, right? You're going to spread the wealth. Right? So the more you have it, the more you can spread the wealth. All right. I have a story about an ancestor of mine, I guess maybe to wrap up. I had my great-grandfather was totally, a a socialist at heart. And we were then, our family was in Ukraine, in Kiev, and under Stalin's rule, which Stalin, dictator maybe? I don't know. Anyway, so my great-grandfather had a very successful supermarket in town, and he was able to provide for his family. He was able to hire people with that supermarket, to work there, and he was spreading as much of the wealth as possible. But because he had the power to spread the wealth, the government was like, nah, I don't think so. And they grabbed him and they took everything our family owned, pulled him into a gulag, or actually my grandmother says it was just a prison in Siberia.
Only a prison in Siberia.
Where he later died. So this was 1963. But the moral of the story here is that he was able to accumulate the wealth and spread it around to his community and give his community jobs and put food on the table of not just his immediate family, but other family members when it was really, really hard to get anything in Russia at the time.
That is an amazing anecdote to end on. Very powerful stuff.
So
thank you for sharing that. And thank you for a very beautiful conversation.
Oh, thank you so much.
There they are.
Thank
The
you.
adoring public. There they are.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really, really, really appreciate you taking the time. Yeah, have a wonderful rest of your day.
Oh, you too. So much.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. So I really enjoyed that interview with Marina Press Granger of the Artist Advisory. I think she's got really wonderful advice and interesting anecdotes. Yeah, good advice. Sometimes good advice is hard to take. So I'm going to try to work hard on setting my intention and following through with my activities, even though I am a bit of a curmudgeon and do think negatively all too often about my career. I'm going to try to be more positive. And the thing I wanted to, really emphasize again is that, gratitude is the attitude.
Next time on Multiple O's.
Next time on Multiple O's, I'll be sharing a brand new interview with Birmingham-based artist Karen McLean. Her work interrogates the complex legacies of colonialism and reflects her experiences growing up in post-independence Trinidad in the 1960s. So that's something to look forward to next time on Multiple O's.
On Multiple O's. Next time on Multiple O's.
Until then, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll accept yourselves unconditionally, your lives, and other people, because we're all just fallible human beings.